This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 451 of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and we are in Flanders for this episode of the podcast, Winksela, Belgium, to be exact. Joining me is Dimitri Staelens from brewery Adept. Welcome to the podcast, Dimitri.
Hi, Jamie.
It's great to have you on. You came highly recommended. My friends Vinny and Tommy and whatnot were here last month and made a visit to your brewery and had a wonderful time, and of course told me that when I was here in Flanders for this visit, that I should absolutely make a point of swinging by and talking with you. And of course, from the couple of beers that we've had so far, I have to agree with them. They've got excellent taste, as we all know. And so here we are. You have an interesting history in past. You have worked with and still work at Duvel. And this brewery, Adept, is a project that you're working on independently of that here in a small village outside of Leuven. You're making everything from specialty projects that are interesting to you, things like raw ales. We are drinking a Belgian blonde ale right now that is certainly not in any way Duvel, but it's a different take on that Belgian style blonde ale. A little bit lower ABV, but lower, I mean 7.5%. But interesting. Malt and rice. Characterful malts, as well as beautiful fermentation, but very dry with a very firm bitterness and even some American hops in it. So I think through the course of this, we'll talk about all of these fun things. Raw ales. We can talk about modern approaches to Belgian-style blonde ales and some of these traditional styles. This brewery itself is aimed at the local village and local community here, and so you balance this kind of expression and artistry and the things that make you excited with this idea of the other thing that makes you excited, which is having happy people drinking beer here in the village that you also live in. And having this place for the local community to come together and everyone having beer to enjoy. And in fact, to that end, you also make beer cocktails with your triple and other beers here. And maybe we'll even talk about beer cocktails, because I think some brewers need to feel like it's okay. It's okay to be...
It's okay.
So maybe we'll talk about some beer cocktails too, something I don't think I have ever talked about here on the podcast. But we'll get through all of that first. If you're looking for a brewery chiller that's worry-free and tough on GWP, then look no further. G&D Chiller's Elite 290 Series chiller uses propane as a natural refrigerant with extremely low global warming potential. This natural, highly efficient refrigerant with near zero GWP will help lower your facility's energy costs and impact on the environment. They're committed to a greener, more efficient future. Visit gdchillers.com to learn more. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain, now with all the ease-of-use benefits of dry yeast. Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London ale strain, but with a serious upgrade, a burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of Dry Tropics London yeast. Also, a day in the life of a brewer is packed enough as it is, so why not let Old Orchard assist with R&D? Custom blend development is available through their innovative R&D lab, and their bulk division supplies a wide range of beverage segments, making it the one-stop shop for flavoring beer and beyond. More information and free samples are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com adept.com/brewer. Right, Dimitri, why don't you tell us the story? Tell us your history in brewing and how that has developed. 30 years now of brewing here in Belgium. And then, from there, tell us how that intersected with the idea of Adept and how this brewery came to be.
Okay, I'll try to live up to the high expectations of the audience. Now that you mentioned good words from Vinny and Tommy, I'll do my best. Indeed, I've done nothing else in my life than being busy with beer, I would say professionally. I did a lot of things, but professionally. And it started all when I was a student at the University of Leuven, mid-90s. I told that story already a lot to a lot of people.
We should say this university is well known in Leuven as a center of brewing knowledge and education, and many brewers have come through that program.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody knows Professor de Klerk, even who started everything in the 60s already. But indeed, I was studying at the University of Leuven, and mid-90s somewhere, I think it was my third year, I passed at the faculty, and I saw a big paper on the walls that the lab or the Center for Malting and Brewing Science was looking for students to join the tasting panel within the framework of a research on beer. So I was flabbergasted because until then, my student life and my connection with beer was only, I would say, enjoying the beer. And there I found out there's a center of malting and brewing science here. There's actually a lot more to it. So I applied for a seat in that tasting panel. I passed some tests, of course, some triangular tests, because they wanted to know if you were fit to join the sensory team. I was proved worthy, and so from then on,
That has to be a dream gig for a university student. I get to taste beer for a tasting panel.
I was flabbergasted, and so I joined 2 times a week. I joined a sensory panel, and we tasted all kinds of pilot brews, and these pilot brews were made to explore the different parameters of brewing and how that reflected then finally in a certain sensory profile. And by joining that team for 1 year, I got to know the lab, the center. And I said, I wanna stay here. So in my 4th year, I did an internship. My 5th year, I did a thesis. That's Center of Malting Center of Malting and Brewing Science, by the way, was run by Professor Delvaux and Professor Guy Dedlings. When I was a student during my thesis year, I had seen that from time to time, one of the students or the collaborators for the center was leaving to join a brewery. And you must know, mid-90s, I would say the brewing scene in Belgium was not so vivid one. A lot of breweries were closed down the past 10, 20 years due to takeovers of the big guys like Stella Artois at that time, Jupiler, Pierre-Boeuf. So there were only a few small breweries which had started up the past 15 years, being Schuf, mid-80s, Dolle Brouwers, mid-80s, and Terdolen, start of the 90s. But so I'm talking about 93, 94, not a lot of big, only breweries shutting down. So you didn't see really ads for brewers in the newspapers back then in Belgium. But I saw from time to time a colleague leaving for a brewery. So I knew it's like more a network thing, You have to know somebody who knows a good guy to join the brewery if we're looking for someone. So I asked Professor Delvaux to stay at the lab and work there until there was a vacancy in one or another brewery in Belgium. I wanted to work in a brewery. I was 200% sure. And I saw okay, if there's no vacancies in the newspaper, I'll stay here and work here and hang around until a vacancy opens up. And so I did there for 3 years. It was a beautiful period. I learned everything there. I learned pilot brewing. I was leading the sensory panel. I learned to do all the beer analysis and raw ingredients analysis on hops, malts, whatever. Learned to do microbiology analysis, some research. We did also some consultancy for Belgian breweries and problem solving. So these 3 years were like a really, really good school until 99, the first vacancy popped in. And that was a vacancy to join Interbrew at that time, now ABI. But Interbrew, fast-growing Belgian company at that time, 100% Belgian. And they were looking for young engineers, young brewers, young brewing engineers to support the growth, the rapid growth that they were experiencing. So I joined Interbrew then because that was the agreement with the Professor Delvaux that I would work there until I had the opportunity to work in a brewery. And then the next 9 years at Interbrew were a roller coaster. I was mainly involved with process and product development for 9 years, both on an international scene and a national scene. Traveled to countries where I never would have traveled before. Siberia, -40, Algeria, China, in regions where nobody speaks English. So I have a lot of very nice and good memories about that period. And working 6 months at Interbrew, I also still remember that day. I was sitting at my desk, sun was shining. I was drafting a recipe for Stella Artois to start tests in another country, in another brewery on license base. And I said wow, this is a hell of a job. I'm now brewing one of the beers I enjoyed a lot, if not too much, when I was a student. I have interesting colleagues. I have an interesting job. I can travel, being well paid. So it ticked all the boxes. And I said, I cannot imagine that I would leave here. Why would I leave here? And I started to do that exercise, that exercise Friday afternoon in the sun on my desk. I said, wow, if I leave, certainly it's not for another Pilsner brewer. It should be like an ale brewer then. And then again, end of the 90s, the only specialty beer breweries, ale brewers, which I really could see as a step forward at that time was a Trappist brewery or Duvel. And I said, okay, I could see if Duvel pops in or pops by or a Trappist, I would think about it. And so that happened then 9 years afterwards. In 2008, Hedwig Neven, and Vinny knows him also very well.
Hedwig is a bit of a legend in the world of beer.
I know. And so Hedwig asked me to come and join Duvel to handle the quality department, to become a quality director of Duvel. And it was a dream come true because Duvel was already one of my favorite beers when I was 18. Yeah? It's the legal drinking age in Belgium, don't worry. I think it's even 16. So Duvel was one of my favorite beers. And so when you have the opportunity to join Duvel, and knowing what they stand for if it comes to quality, I didn't hesitate, and I left my job at Interbrew. At that time, it was already InBev, not ABI yet, but InBev. So I joined Duvel then to become a quality director for Duvel, and I occupied this function until last February. At the end, I was responsible for the quality of 8 breweries in Europe and international. But then in February, I decided to take a step back to spend a little bit more time here at Adept and a little bit less time at Duvel. So I'm still working now part-time at Duvel, but also trying to spend a little bit more time over here. Because the past 5 years, because Adept started in 2020, I worked for Duvel during the week, and I was doing all the Adept work in the weekend and the holidays. So the last 5 years, I didn't have a lot of holidays nor weekends, and that had to change at my age.
Sure. That's a brutal schedule.
Yeah. And why did I start Adept? Well, its origins are at the same period, mid-90s. I was so intrigued by everything which is brewing. I love the world of brewing. I loved the atmosphere who was there. I loved the beer scene as a whole. And at the age of already 23, 4 or 5, I decided that once I will have my own brewery. And again, mid-90s, as I told before, it was not very common to have that ambition. There were only breweries closing down in Belgium. And the only 3 examples in the past 15 years were Schuf, Dolle Brouwers, and Ter Dolen. But it took me 20-something years to start up a project. We started this project of Adept and the Smederij in Winxle, 2015-16. So it took me 20 years, of course, to save a little bit of money, and to find the right setting, the right environments, the right group of people, the right, It was waiting until sun and stars aligned all on one line to say like, okay, this is the project. And so we started this project in 2015, but only preparing, creating companies, finding funding, making plans, getting permits, looking for an architect for the renovation, renovating the whole thing. So it took us 4 or 5 years to get everything done. And Adept and the Smederij, we started up in January 2020. 6 weeks before COVID.
Timing.
Oh, yeah. 6 weeks before COVID. We had to close then again on Friday, March 13th. Friday the 13th. Yeah. Oh. But I think we survived, and you referred a little bit to community. I think we survived because we are a corporation. Our ties are much closer than, I would say, just having, because the Smederij is a combination of a brewery, I would say a bar/restaurant, and some meeting rooms, and we are organized now in a cooperation, and the result is that the links are much more firmer and different than just 3 entrepreneurs working and living together in the same building. We have the same mission, we have the same goals, and we are very much aligned in that way. For instance, I only sold my beers during COVID, with the takeaway meals of the restaurants. It didn't make any sense that I would say the bar restaurant would go broke, bankrupt, and that I would still have beer to sell. So we created a lot of synergies, I would say, during COVID, which helped us to survive. And we also had a lot of support of the community. As I told you, we have a lot of links, and that's not the aim of this podcast. But the whole origin of this place, of the Smederij, and Adept, is everything is just created because this village needed a place like this. So yeah, but we survived COVID, and we celebrated our 5 years March. So yeah.
Well, I love how that idea that the village needed a place like this is the driving factor, and it's the driving factor, and it even expresses itself in the beers that you make and how you design those beers, that it is certainly about what you are interested in, and it is also about what the village is interested in, and where those two things can come together, and find some mutual common ground, and I think that that's a great aspect for to come at this from, and I'd love to talk to you then as you started thinking about what beers you were going to make here, how that creative process processed. But then before we do that, give your customers a pleasant surprise with Audacia in your next IPA, Brought to you by Indie Hops, this descendant of Strata brings her own flair of catchy lilac and lavender aroma and flavors of sweet tart berries and tangy lychee. Audacia loves family reunions with Strata and has even more fun when Citra, Simcoe, Amarillo, and others join the party. Let Audacia loose and watch the smiles spread. Indie Hop's life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And looking for a powerful no-rinse sanitizer that gets the job done fast? Meet SantaClean PAA Pro from 5 Star Chemicals. This EPA-registered PAA-based acid sanitizer is tough on beer stone and perfect for everything from kegs to packaging lines. Available in 2 convenient sizes, it's ideal for coarse sprayers, fermenters, and more. Trusted by pros, designed for performance. SantaClean PAA Pro helps you brew with confidence. Learn more at 5starchemicals.com. Brew better, brew with 5 Star. And this episode is sponsored by PackTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PackTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PackTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit packtech-opi.com. That's PAKTECH-OPI.com. So, Dimitri, tell me about this process of designing a beer lineup, but then some of the feeling, especially with this beer named Adept, because the beer came first, and then the brewery became named after the beer, and so this beer named Adept, this Belgian blonde ale that's 7.5% bottle re-fermented in 775 centiliter bottles. This is a defining beer, but you also have serving tanks full of beers of different strengths, because your locals each come and find a favorite beer and then come back and over and over with that. So talk to me about some of that creative process and, how, what you understand, because 30 years of making beer, you've been around this, you have all the choices at your fingers. This is a smaller operation. You can focus on high quality ingredients. The cost is not going to be prohibitive. You can do what you want with whatever you have. And so in this kind of scenario, you get to make the decisions all for yourself, but with that community in mind. Talk about some of how that influenced your beer design.
I'll give it a try. As you mentioned, the smederij was, and Adept is a part of the smederij. It also was started because this village was a typical, we call it in Belgium, it's a literal translation, sleeping village of Leuven. So people only come over here to sleep, I would say, and they, if they want to work, they leave for Brussels or Leuven or Mechelen or Antwerp. If they want to go to the movie or want to have a dinner, they go to Leuven, which is only a few miles away. So there was really no place here for the local community. And so with the 2 other entrepreneurs, being Jana from the bar restaurants and Nelen and Bert from the meeting rooms side, we wanted to create a place here in the village so that local people have a place to eat and to drink. As a matter of fact, when this building was bought, it's an old blacksmith house and a blacksmith workshop, I would say, which was renovated. We organized a meeting with all the people who were interested in the village to have a brainstorm. Like, we have this building, what do you want us to do over there? And of course, Flemish people and Belgian people, they like to eat and like to drink. So number 1 on the priority list was we want a place to eat and drink. And then having the idea of a local brewery next to it, which would enable the bar restaurant to have special beers, which are only being brewed and sold over there, generated also a lot of enthusiasm. And then having meeting rooms over there made us believe in the idea, because that would attract B2B people over here too during the week, so that we would be less dependent on the village people, not the music group, that the people of the village.
Sure.
So the chances on an economically viable scenario were much higher. So we went for that option: meeting rooms, bar and restaurant, and brewery. But as a consequence, if we wanted to have an appealing portfolio for everybody in the village and for the B2B guests, as I said, I'm a personal fan of sour beers and barrel-aged imperial stouts. But if I would have opted for that portfolio,
30 years in the industry at
at
InBev and Duvel, and you're into barrel-aged stouts.
And Duvel. Yeah. Of course. It's my dark side, I guess.
All right.
But I like it a lot. And unfortunately, but probably we'll come to that, we created a bit of that with the Royal series, the Middernachtsson Royal series. So I have my little things next to, I would say what is the main purpose here is indeed to create a base portfolio of beers which are appealing for the people in the village and the B2B guests. And so how do you start with that? It's like, after being 25 years in the beer business, I often get the place, how do you do that? It's like, you start cooking and you say like, I want to make a pasta. Oh, I find this ingredient and I will use that. I'm sure every brewer recognizes that certainly that feeling. Of course, I had the chance to work for Interbrew InBev, which has a lot of high volume commercial beers. And I don't mean necessarily commercial in a bad way. But a lot of beers.
Very successful beers.
That's what I mean. Very successful beers. And being responsible for the quality of 17 years of Duvel Moordgat beers, which a lot of interesting breweries being part of Duvel. As you know, Firestone Walker, Ommegang Boulevard, De Koning, Liefmans, Schoof, Duvel. And also the beers in the breweries in Ducato in Italy, and it's in Holland, and Bernard in Czech Republic, Mont Blanc, Brasserie du Mont Blanc in France. You come into contact with a lot of interesting beers and a lot of interesting recipes, and I guess what you see here is maybe the result of 30 years traveling in
the synthesis.
Yes, a synthesis. And I always summarize it as, I would say it's Belgian style without any doubt, because the primary focus is of course local people. But I think that all the beers have lots of character. They're not, you could easily opt for more accessible tastes. So we have certainly a little bit, we want to educate the people a little bit and train them a bit, but I don't challenge them too much,
Well, that's the key, right? And that's, it's whether you're brewing a, Pilsner in Philadelphia or, a Czech style lager in Denver, the key is finding a way to make it characterful while it still holds to expectations that people have for the broader style, becomes your own thing and not just a copy of what other people make that speaks in some way to where you are and what you're doing. And, but then also reflects that kind of refinement. So when you were tackling this blonde beer, named Adept, you went at it because you very much did not want to make another Duvel. You did not need, the world did not, Duvel is already a perfect beer.
Yes.
The world does not need another Duvel. So, but you still found space in this blonde beer category where you could do something that was going to be a little bit different and your own kind of thing. Tell me about that process.
A little bit coming back on the former question, for me, the real proof of the pudding is like after you finish the first glass, do you want a second one? or are you doubting, or are you, I just want to have a second glass of it. Give me more. There are a lot of beers on the market where you start off and you say like 1 or 2 sips, this is good, or oh yeah, this is nice or interesting. But then by the end of the glass, you say like, nah, and now we will have something else. For me, that's the test. Does it passes the second glass test? And whether you call it then you're looking for balance, sessionability, whatever, I think it's a little bit everything together. Adept, for instance, as I said before, I was already fond of Duvel when I was 18 or 20. And people very often ask me, what is your favorite beer? I said, I have so many favorite beers. Depends on the moment. And for every moment I can imagine a beer being the perfect beer for as an aperitif, as a beer during the lunch, as a beer to sit in the sofa in the evening and relax. So to go out with the friends, everybody knows the different occasions where you want or can have a beer. And I have different beers for different occasions, but one beer that fits all of those occasions for me is Duvel. I can have it as an aperitif. I can have it as a beer when I'm going out with friends. I can have it to relax in the seat. I pairs well during a meal. And I wanted to have a little bit the same feeling with Adept. Maybe not the best beer at a certain occasion, but a beer which suits a lot of occasions and pleases a lot. And that was important because Adept started as a fundraising beer for a project linked with a local school over here. And so I was looking for the Duvel feeling, being dry, clean bitterness, fruitiness, but not overpowering, because too much fruitiness can lead to like a beer where you stop after one glass again. Lots of CO2, so you call that effervescence or something like that. I'm not a native English speaker, but I think
you nailed it.
Yeah, high carbonation levels. So I was looking for dryness, bitterness, slight aromatics, high carbonation. But at the same time, I wanted to do everything which is not Duvel, just being sure that I was not blamed, just stealing the recipe of Duvel and diluting it down to 7.5. Sure. So Adept has rice in it, Duvel hasn't. Adept has specialty malts in it, Duvel hasn't. Adept has one of my favorite American hops in it, Simcoe. Duvel is all European hops.
Simcoe?
Yes.
Wow.
I like it a lot.
All right, we'll talk more about that for sure.
But I'm not I only know it because I enjoy it, and Vinny is the master. The only thing 7.5 ABV instead of 8.5. The only thing I kept was the high carbonation, of course. And I must admit that it pleases a lot of people, which also like Duvel, but it's a totally different beer. But it attracts the same kind of people, I would say.
Well, let's talk about how you think about the malt bill, and I think it's interesting that you incorporate rice into this. Obviously, you're building it; it's a 7.5% beer, so and you want it to also be light, but also at this point, at that kind of ABV level, and that you are pulling specialty malts in, but in small ways to add small bits of character. And I would love to talk about that from a sense of this kind of approaching refinement and how these very small additions of small things, help build a bigger whole together. Let's do that. But first, when it comes to packaging your brew, think Heartprint, the original in digital can printing. With 3 locations across North America, the Heartprint team has your back from concept to can. Count on fast turnarounds, no minimums, graphic design support, and rock-solid can quality. All on 100% infinitely recyclable cans. Get 10% off your first can order when you mention the Craft Beer and Brewing podcast. Open an account at heartprint.com. That's HART print.com. Or email info@heartprint.com for details. And Brightly Software, a Siemens company, partners with organizations at every stage of their asset lifecycle journey. Brightly is a complete asset management and operations software that enhances organizational sustainability, compliance, and efficiency through data-driven decision-making. Streamline maintenance, simplify capital planning, and optimize resources with solutions uniquely designed to support long-term goals. Learn more at brightlysoftware.com. Also, in Flanders, beer is more than a drink. It's a cultural thread woven through history, cuisine, and community. Today, microbreweries honor tradition while experimenting with bold flavors, and young chefs embrace zero-waste cooking, local ingredients, and inventive beer-infused dishes. Even chocolatiers are reimagining Belgian pralines with surprising pairings. Across kitchens and breweries, expertise and creativity drive a passion for flavor, rooted in Belgium's DNA. Raising a glass of Belgian beer means savoring centuries of craftsmanship, innovation, and culinary artistry. Come to Flanders in 2026 to celebrate the 10th anniversary of UNESCO recognition and sample this unique combination of creative brewing tradition and culinary exploration.
Amen to that.
Right. I have spent the last several days here on a press trip organized by Visit Flanders, and we have 2 nights ago had an extraordinary meal at a Michelin star restaurant, and turn out with a beer pairing dinner at a Michelin star restaurant. I think just the mere concept of that beer pairing dinner at Michelin star restaurant is something that can happen in Belgium, but it is not common in other places. But Belgium is this place where the intersection of, and also had a dinner 2 nights before that at Gebrand Winning.
Oh yeah, nice,
excellent, beautiful, selection of beer and dishes, to pair with it. Just extraordinary. So if you are a fan of food and a fan of great beer, great food, great beer, Belgium's a phenomenal place to experience both of those things together.
Sometimes people from Belgium don't see it themselves anymore because they used to, but it's good that sometimes you hear an external voice looking to what I think everybody in Belgium considers as being normal.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about building a grain bill for your blonde beer. You mentioned using specialty malts in this to add some more dimension and character to it. And since you're also adding additional bitterness to the beer through more hops and even a little bit of Simcoe and American hops, that it's going to have that kind of finishing bitterness and this kind of dryness. And so, talk to me about how you thought about crafting the malt bill that's going to support that kind of stronger flavor.
I think it all started from what I told before. I wanted to have a dry, clean, bitter, high carbonated blonde ale, sessionable, balanced, dryness. Strong Belgian strong golden ales very often achieve it with playing with the malt sugar ratio. I wanted to achieve it through a different way by inserting rice, because rice also adds some crispness, dryness, lowers the color, gives that nice green touch to the color. So I like rice. So I played with sugar and rice to achieve a dryness. And as you say, I want a little bit of more aroma. So next to the European hops, classic European hops, I inserted a little bit of Simcoe. And to support that a little bit, Simcoe in late kettle, whirlpool-hopping. And to support that insertion, I added a little bit of Munich malt to support that Simcoe thing a little bit. And it did the trick. I also insert in all my beers, I insert some wheat malt because I don't use any tetra to support foam stability. Yeah. So I always add like 5 to 10% of wheat malt anyway. But you don't taste that. It just does the trick for the foam. And you play with all the other parameters to achieve the right taste and sensory profile, I guess.
When you use rice in this, do you use some like flaked rice, or are you using some
flaked rice?
Okay.
flaked rice.
And then what kind of, in typical, how much flaked rice would find its way in here? 10% wheat malt.
10% of rice.
10% rice.
That order of magnitude, at least, yeah.
And then just a little touch of Munich malt, or is that a bigger percentage also?
No, that would be half. I think
half?
five-ish.
Oh, okay.
5%-ish. Yeah.
And do any other malts find their way into this?
No. I would say barley malt, which would be a Pilsner malt, I guess. Mm-hmm. Low-colored barley malt, wheat malt, the same, low-colored wheat malt. 5% of Munich, rice, 10%-ish.
It's funny how you're using rice to lighten the color, using Munich to add a little bit of color, and they almost kind of, balance each other out there.
Yeah, because then you play with some sugar also to lighten the body and enhance the drinkability again. But I would say much lower than typical triples or strong golden ales, I would say. I guess depending on the density and the brew house yield I get, it would be... if I calculate back to dry matter, it might also be 10 to 15% of sugar, not more. Mm-hmm. So the dryness really comes from the rice, the other type of hopping. The CO2 helps also to dry, for instance. I certainly aim also for the 8 grams per liter of CO2.
When you think about malt flavor, is there... do you have favorite malt providers here in Belgium, and in terms of flavor and the way that they work technically through your brewing process?
When I started up, I just went for Dingemans because I know Carl Dingemans very well.
Sure.
He has great specialty malts, and so then immediately I sourced also the Pilsner and the wheat malt with him. But recently this year, and it's good that you mentioned, in Herens, so Wingselen is a part of a bigger town, I would say community, being Herens. And in Herens you have a malting house. And so very often when I did brewing tours here, people ask me, and are you using malt from Herens? Herens, the malting plant is a former Cargill malting plant, and it's now part of Boortmalt, which is... I don't know, Malt Europe and Boortmalt. They very often trade places for the biggest one in the world. But so now it's a Boortmalt malting plant here in Heren at a few miles distance. You can see it from here if you're on the roof. But I always laughed and I said, no, the smallest bag they have in Herens, in Boortmalt, is a 1,000 kilogram bag. They only did big bags, I said, I'm 53, I cannot handle a 1,000 kilogram bag. So I'm not sourcing in Herent, I source at Dingemans, Antwerp. But then recently I found out that in Herent now they are malting local Belgian barley. So that Belgian barley is harvested in Waals-Brabant. Brabant Walloon, I don't know how you translate it. I would say 20, 30 miles from here, not further. Also by a corporation, like De Smederij is also a corporation. So that immediately creates a lot of, I would say, interests. Synergies, yeah.
And similar values.
Yeah, and so I went to Heren and I said, now I suddenly found out that you're malting local Belgian barley here in Herens. Is it available in small bags? And they said, yeah, for sure. We can provide you with 25 kilogram bags malted in Herens. And so, unfortunately, for my pale malt and my pale barley malt and my wheat malt, I had to change from Carl to, I would say, a Belgo malt, local barley malt. And now I'm really happy because I can say instead of using French barley being malted in Antwerp, Stabroek by Dingemans, now I use Belgian barley malted in my own town, I would say. So, but I warned them. I said because the local barley is available in much smaller quantities than, of course, French barley. I said, I only want to buy the local barley if it meets my quality requirements. So even as a small brewer, I'm picky on my barley, which I found always a little bit weird. If you talk with brewers, they only talk about their hops, but they rarely talk about water. And barley is also like more a commodity very often for a lot of brewers, while it's the backbone of your beer. And so
what when you say meets your quality requirement, how do you define that quality requirement? When are you looking at that COA, as we would call it?
Yeah.
And what are some of those key requirements from that from the grower to the maltster to you that you are really pinpointing? Again, someone who comes out of quality control for Duvel, you have a very finely tuned sense for this that is certainly maybe more heightened than a lot of small craft brewers out there.
If you're a brewer in general, every line on the COA is important. Every analysis is important, but you cannot be strict on every line because the maltsters, they also work with the natural ingredients. And if you say like, I want this line to be that, and this line to be that, and this spec to be like that, and you don't give them any degree of freedom, you're making their life impossible. And several years or some years, you will find yourself without any malting, without any malts, I would say. But if I have to pick the most important ones, and of course I'm influenced a bit by Duvel also, and what I saw at Interbrew. But for a Belgian brewer like me, it's very important that the malt is gushing free. No gushing, so no hydrophobians. And of course, the more Nordic you get, so French barley, local barley in Walloon, in Brabant Walloon here, is more Northern. So we risk a bit more mold grow and some more gushing. So that would be my number one. Secondly, I want enough proteins in my beer to have enough foam. In Belgium, foam is very often important. Part of the experience, you need to have a decent foam head. So I would say above 10. I want to have the proteins above 10. And then, of course, in combination with a low Kolbach, you need to have a lot of proteins, but not too high Kolbach. So a lot of high molecular weight proteins to have enough foam on your Belgian-style beer. And then, of course, despite the higher amount of proteins, a color as low as possible. And that's why you stop right there. Because if you make the life even more difficult for the maltsters, they say like stop it over here. But I think all the other ones, if it's beta glucans, PDMS, what do you all have? You can play a little bit as a brewery yourself too. But how much proteins are being delivered by the malts? And if your beer is jumping out of the bottle if you open it because you had re-fermentation and high carbonation, that's something you never can find a solution to. So that's why I would go for those specifics.
Sure. How much variation year to year, or even batch to batch within a year, given that these are smaller farmers making a kind of more of a specialty thing? What is the range of variation for that?
It's only the second year now that I can compare, but I would say like the quality of this year and last year is quite comparable. At least from what you read in the COA. So I'm happy. Yeah. I'm happy. I think it's quite similar.
And in terms of flavor, it aligns with the malt that you were using before?
I feel some differences between the Dingemans malt and the local malt, to be honest. but it's largely offset by the feeling that you're using Belgian barley and malted in your own community. So
sure.
Yeah.
How would you describe some of the flavor difference? I mean, we're talking about very small things
I saw
here.
a decrease in brew house yield, for instance.
Really?
So it has a little price tag to it, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
That was one. I think that was the main one.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit darker in color, maybe. But I would say, I think the age of the beer will play a bigger role than the little color increase, I would say, from the fresh beer. So I think, and the price tag, of course, it comes also with a plus on the sustainability image. And so, and of course, I gave that feedback. So they also know what they should be working on. But I will receive.
Of course you did.
I will receive the new crop now. I'm signing up now for a contract for the 2025 crop, and very curious to brew with them in January, February.
And I think they know that if they have a particular batch that doesn't hit your specs, maybe they don't put that into the small bags for you.
I don't have a lab here, so I only have to trust my senses.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you do have some friends that have a pretty nice lab, and you're still there.
I try to keep those things absolutely separated.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
absolutely.
Fair. Well, let's talk about mash process then. So you take this grain bill. I assume trying to achieve this level of dryness that you have a dedicated step mashing regime in order to get there.
Yeah, I have a step mash, classical step mash. I'm mashing in at 63. But 2 years ago we had to mash in at 65 in Belgium, because the gelatinization temperature of the crop 2023, I think, was very high. And so I found that remarkable. And I said that to a lot of maltsters. We were this close to, probably the first time in brewing history, to not be able to brew in the natural way anymore. At least not if you handle the two-step mash, which is still very common in Europe, because the gelatinization temperature from the barley starch was so high that it was only gelatinizing at 65, 66 degrees, when your beta amylase is only surviving for 5 minutes. So your starch was gelatinized, but you didn't have any beta amylase anymore to cut the maltose. And I thought, okay, all the brewers were amazed because we saw apparent extract, final gravity rising, attenuation were dropping a lot. And I would have expected that maltsters and barley growers would be alarmed with that thing happening. And so I thought I will see a lot of projects starting up on what are the causes of high gelatinization temperatures, what to do, how can we affect our malting parameters to work on that, to get gelatinization temperature back down again. But nothing was happening. I think all the maltsters were blaming it on the hot weather in France. And I said so what should we do? Pray then that next year it's a colder summer? So I was, and to every maltster I talked, I was like, are you really realizing what was happening? And because crop 2024, everything was back to normal again. And now crop 2025 is again gelatinization temperatures as normal, being normal. But in 2023, we were really close to not have any beta amylase activity anymore working on starch. I found that amazing. And of course, they know but I said maybe we are looking for the wrong varieties, barley varieties. And, the barley which you plant this year is the seed of last crop. So maybe during all those years you accumulated, because gelatinization temperatures were only rising multiple years. Said maybe it's something which every generation is being increased. Oh, we never thought about it. I was flabbergasted. I said, like, maybe that's, we never thought about it. Maybe it's a generational thing, yeah. And maybe we're working with the wrong varieties, and maybe we should not blame it only on the weather. And I see now a little bit more research going in that direction, but in my opinion, still not enough.
Interesting.
Yeah, so here I have the 6372 typical two-step mash. But to be honest, when I started brewing Adept as a fundraising beer, before I started my own brewery, it was brewed at Brouwerij de Vlier in Kesselo, which is a very good brewery. I like Mark Andries a lot, and we brew the raw ales together, for instance. And he has a single mash installation. So Adept was brewed for many years with a single mash, 1 hour, 66, 65. It tasted as good, to be honest. So I think, to be honest, I was born and raised.
You have yeast here that can do the work no matter how you set it up.
I was born and raised as a Belgian brewer, so we were trained to believe in the two-step mash, and that's what I'm doing here. Why? Because I can. But Mark has a one-step mash installation, a Canadian one, with a mashing vessel Lotterton in one. And it does the trick as well. So, on the other hand, Matt Brynildsen, when he was brewing in the pilot brewery in Duvel, he said, like, now I know why you need a multi-step, because otherwise here you don't get a starch negative wort. So I think the truth is somewhere in the middle with the two-step mash thing here. Depends on your malting quality again, probably.
So you go through this, two-step mash, and then talk me through the next part of the process.
It's very classical. I have the two-step mash, 63, 72. Then I go up to 78, hold it there for 10 minutes, and then I transfer to the Lotterton. I have a 2-hour wort filtration, wort lautering process, which takes about 2 hours. First runnings, once your spent grains is almost visible, you start sparging. I sparge continuously. I sparge as much as I'm taking off without turning my rakes. Mm-hmm. I only turn my rakes if I need to, if I see the differential pressure going up. But that's just a belief, and it works for me. Pure lautering by gravitation. No pump sucking on the bottom. I'm able to do so, but I don't do it. I think good things come to those who wait. It takes me 2 hours. If I use the pump, it might save me 30 minutes, 45 minutes probably. But I don't do it. Then I go to boil, 1 hour boil. Nothing fancy. I acidify twice, both my mash pH and my boiling pH. I bring them to the right pH with the help of lactic acid addition. So I boil at 5.2. 1 hour. Hops at the start of boil, and then hops in the whirlpool. After 60 minutes, a whirlpool, I would say 30.
What kind of hops at the start?
Typically Saaz, the types Saaz likes.
Sure.
Saaz, Lublin, Belgian Saaz if possible. Otherwise, Lublin, which is the Saaz plants, but cultivated in Poland.
Poland, yeah.
Or Saaz. But I would say that's my order. First Belgian Saaz, then Lublin, and otherwise Saaz from the Czech Republic.
Why that? What is it about Belgian Saaz and then Lublin Saaz?
You throw it in at the start of boil, and again, local sourcing.
Yeah.
I told you also during the visit that if possible, we aim for local sourcing. And it does the trick, Belgian Saaz. Certainly at the start of boil.
And then some other hops at the very end there.
The Simcoe and some for Adept, for instance, a little bit of Styrian Golding, Celea in the whirlpool. Combination from European hops and the US hop. Then 30 minutes rest, I would say, and then transfer to the fermenter. My yeast to go for the moment is the Fermentis BE 256, Belgian Abbey strain
For the moment.
for the moment.
Wow. So you are not die hard on a single yeast strain.
No.
It can be flexible for you.
I started off with different yeast strains, but for the moment I end up with only the BE 256.
Why?
It ferments out completely, always. So when you do re-fermentation in the bottle afterwards, you don't have any surprises. And, it's a Belgian Abbey strain. For one reason or another, the main consumer, which again is the main shareholder, I would say, here in this place, is liking that flavor. It's not a phenolic yeast strain. It's fruity and it ferments out. It's alcohol tolerant. Does the trick. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about that fermentation. Temperature. Is it a finicky one for that?
You have to go high enough, otherwise it develops some H2S flavors. So most of the times I start.
So you have to do it a little warmer then.
Yeah. Huh. At the first I did it not warm enough, and I ended up with some H2S. But okay, I don't mind H2S. It's the sign that your beer doesn't contain any oxygen. But the H2S disappears anyway over time. But the fresh beer, if you don't watch out with the B256, it has some H2S. But if you ferment it at 26, 27 degrees top temperature, then you don't have it. I also like a free rise. So I start most of the times at 20, 21 degrees, and I just let it rise until 26, 27. To certainly not stress it the first 48, 60 hours.
What do you like about that free rise? What does that contribute to the beer?
It accelerates the thing. The yeast starts and nothing is stopping him, and he has some space to go and to leave and to start off like the rocket who's leaving. If you would leave it refrain it again at 100 meters above the ground, you just let it go, and then when it's on its altitude, you continue. And again, that's in my opinion, the highest. It increases the probability that the fermentation goes until the final end. But it works for me.
Sure. It builds momentum. You don't want to stop its momentum.
And of course, very often my wort at the end of the transfer is at 25, 24. I put my dry yeast on it. It dissolves better on a high temperature. But then I cool it down on the fermenter, and then I let it go again.
Yeah.
That works for me. Yeah.
And then after fermentation, you
4 to 6
Adept,
weeks lagering.
Yeah.
In total,
right. So you don't filter. You instead use a longer conditioning process at a lower temperature in a tank.
Yeah. I truly believe that good things come to those who wait. Maybe I said already before, it takes time. And if you have the capacity, or if you're not volume driven, for the moment I'm not volume driven here, which is a luxury, I admit. I'd like to keep it that way. And the beers taste great, and I get positive feedback of everybody who's tasting it. They might be lying, I don't know, but it works for me. At least, I always wanted to brew the beers that I at least like to drink. And I'm happy with the beers that I taste, which are made here in the brewery. It would be hard for me to settle with beers that I think like, that's not completely okay, but they won't taste.
Sure.
Because I'm always prepared for a brewer dropping by, or a picky consumer saying like, but that taste is a little bit off, and then I have to think like, shit, he's right. So no.
Yeah, better to avoid that from the start. So then, and then the Adept Belgian Blonde is also re-fermented in the bottle.
Yes, because I like the CO2. We have Adept here on draft from the serving tank. People like it, It's the best seller over here. But if I compare the serving tank at 5 grams per liter And the bottle at 8 grams per liter, I know absolutely what I prefer, absolutely. And that's the high CO2, but that's just me. You have two types of consumers.
So 8 grams per liter, if you divide by 2, that's 4 volumes.
I think so.
Yeah, that's a very nice, lively carbonation level.
Yeah. And while the one on tank is 2.5 volumes.
Which is okay.
Yeah. But you have two types of consumers. You have really consumers who find carbonation bloating and it renders the beer undrinkable. And you have people who need CO2. And from time to time, you have to let a burp escape. But it keeps your stomach going and, I don't know, acidic or whatever. I'm certainly part of the second type. If I go to the UK, for instance, I really love the beers and certainly the cask ales and everything. But between every 1 or 2 pints of cask ale, I just order sparkling water or a Coke to have some CO2, and then I can get going again. I just need the CO2.
Sideline your CO2 just to keep things going.
I need the CO2.
Interesting, yeah.
So, but here I have both options: high CO2 Adept from the bottle and low CO2 Adept from the serving tank.
So let's change gears. We've been talking about your Belgian blonde, but another thing that some interesting kind of brewer-centric project that you've engaged in are brewing raw ales. Yesterday, when I was at the Christmas Beer Festival in Essen, you had 3 different of these, both the regular raw ale as well as 2, I think, barrel-aged versions of this of the raw ale. They're pouring at the Winter Beer Festival. Really super fun festival. What a crazy time to have 200-something Christmas beers all there just for one festival. 2 days, mob scene, packed with people. Just it was a fun special event. So but let's talk about raw ales. This is so no boil is your approach here. Talk about your inspiration behind this and what led you to explore in this raw ale space, and then let's talk about the why behind it.
Raw ale brewing was a thing that I discovered during COVID. At least COVID was good for something. I bought a book, Farmhouse Brewing, I believe, from a Marcus.
Phil Markowski?
No, a Marcus or something. Farmhouse Brewing, which deals about farmhouse brewing in Scandinavia and Lithuania.
Oh, Lars Marius Garshol?
Yes.
There we go.
Yes, that one.
A contributor to Craft Beer and Brewing magazine, and we have articles from Lars in most of the issues.
Yeah. So indeed, that book, I had seen it on a few fora, and I said, I must have that book. So I ordered it, and I read it, and I was flabbergasted. I explained before that I did nothing else but brewing, but beer brewing, being active in the beer brewing world. And suddenly I found out that it was possible to brew beers without boiling. And, being trained at the university level with all the many reasons why you should boil a brew, you immediately get a lot of objections in your head. Yes, but, and what if, and it's not possible because of that and that and that. But then you start reading about it and you read more and then you think that, okay, that's solved. And then you start to dig in some articles more because you want to know more about it. And finally, you see that a lot of your first objections are already being answered. And then you say maybe we should try it once. And during COVID, it was forbidden for people to have contacts outside your bubble. But in Belgium, it was allowed to have B2B meetings. So I had a lot of B2B meetings with Marc Andries from the Vlier in Kesselo. Marc Andries. He has also some history in Belgian brewing industry. He worked at Schoof, he worked at Brouwerij Haagt. He started this brewery, I would say, 15 years ago. So good guy, very good brewer, very original beers. He has a lot of original beers too. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of it beer cocktails. You should certainly go over there once too. He's crazy. No, in a good way. And so I had a lot of meetings between brackets with Mark because it was a dull period. And so very often we had a meeting at his bar in his tap room. It's empty tap room. And I said, like, I have been reading about those raw ales, and it's amazing. You can make beer without boiling. And he had the same objections as I had, being formed also at the university level, but in Brussels. I said, yeah, but that is not an objection, and you solve it like this and this and this. And he said, okay, let's do collaboration, raw ale. My brew house is a 1,000-liter brew house. His brew house is a 500-liter brew house, which you risk already half the volume. And we said, we will split the volume, each 250 liters, and then the risk is low. So we decided to sit together and to brew a raw ale together. And we went for a dark beer at first, because, and everybody knows the feeling, I guess, when you make a dark beer. When you taste the wort, the first runnings, you taste it, you always think like, Jesus, this will be an amazing dark beer. And then after boiling, you taste the same wort and you say, like, where are all the flavors gone? And I remember when I was working at Interbrew, at the Stella Artois brewery, and we were boiling Leffe Bruin, the dark Leffe, on some days. And there was temperature inversion. And we were really boiling, the main boiling phase, lots of vapors coming out of the chimneys. And there was temperature inversion. Those fumes, they go down to the soil. And when you're walking by and these fumes come on top of you, you're like in a Turkish bath full of dark beer flavors, And that was always a moment where I stopped and I was like inhaling the dark fumes of those boiling dark Leffe. And I said, yeah, but of course, if you boil all those nice flavors, they're not in the wort anymore. That's why it's always tastes so much less interesting. I said, so probably because with a pale beer, you only boil off the negative ones. Let's say you get all the grainy stuff out and the DMS, which probably will also be a subject if we talk about raw ales. But the benefits are the double in a dark beer because you keep all the good stuff inside. And the second thing where I was still not comfortable at making a raw ale was, of course, colloidal stability. I was scared for flocks. But I thought if you brew a dark beer, you don't see the flocks. That's like Rochefort. Rochefort also has always flocks in it, but you don't see them because it's a dark beer. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, a lot of advantages in terms of flavor and no flocks visible. Okay, let's go for a dark one. And so we said, with Mark, okay, we will a dark beer and it's Scandinavian farmhouse brewing style. And so we looked for a name and we came up with Middernachtzon, being midnight sun. It's typical Scandinavian phenomenon linked with the night, but it's sunny in the night, it's dark, it's light, it's strange. So we called the series, because eventually it became a series. We call it Middernachtzon, midnight sun. And the first one was just a straight Middernachtzon beer. But over the years, we barrel-aged it with cacao nibs, without cacao nibs on Belgian gin barrels. We infused it with Scharbeekse Krieken to make it, to try the combination of red fruits, sour, and the raw ale. So we had a lot of fun. And we always brew on Whit Monday, the day after Pentecost, I believe, Whit Monday. We always block that day in our calendar to brew the next midnight sun. And then, you have we always launch it at the moments where the summertime becomes wintertime. We change the hour in Belgium. Mm-hmm. I think in some states in the US maybe too, you change the time between winter and summer.
Yes, we do that October, November sometimes.
And we always launch the midnight sun at that moment.
Okay.
And so that gives a few months of maturation, which a dark complex beer really loves. to get into balance before we launch it on the market. So that's how we started up with raw ale brewing. And then we were talking with Philippe Delvaux, which is the son of Freddy Delvaux, my former professor at university, which has De Kroon and Neerese. He got also interested by the raw ale brewing, and now we did already for 2 times a blonde raw ale collaboration, because we were really afraid of flocks, to split the volume in 3. And it's called Goedzakken and Vetzakken. It means good guys and dirtbags. And the name comes from an old recipe of La Combre, 1851, where he describes raw ale brewing, or at least not everything was boiled, of 2 partial mashes, one with a lot of wheat, which were the dirtbags, because probably it latered really badly, and the good guys were the partial mash with a lot of barley in it. And so that was the inspiration of the Goedzakken and Vetzakken, good guys and dirtbags. And so every year we make 1 or 2 raw ale brews just to refine the methods, to get experience with it. Yeah, and maybe to one day to transition.
So what have you learned from this? So far, earlier, you're still somewhat early in the process, but you mentioned having to control DMS. You mentioned trying to heighten and hold on to that malt character that might otherwise be volatilized in that boiling process, or an hour-long boiling process is a pretty long time to blow off some of that character and cook down some of that malt character. So talk to me about what you have learned through doing that, that you have then been able to implement in later versions.
I think, to be honest, that there are very few reasons to not boil. There's a disadvantage. You have to boil your hops separately. You still have to boil your hops. Otherwise, you never get isomerization from alpha acids to isoalpha acids. So you still have to boil, but you do it in a little casserole, when you're making a food or soup for a Boy Scout camp of 100 persons, and then you pour it into your main brew. We don't see a milky product, not in the blonde one, not in the dark one. I was amazed to observe that, to be honest, that we don't see any flocks at all. I have theories about it, why you don't see those flocks.
What's the theory?
I think the flocks which you see in beer is proteins who are denatured, who coagulate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we ever reach the temperatures where you do that.
Mm.
You don't destabilize them. They just remain in solution.
So you don't achieve the break that you would otherwise.
No. It's the same with DMS. When I learned that DMS is not even formed above 80 degrees, under 80 degrees, then you don't have to boil it off either. And I was flabbergasted because I was trained like you have to boil 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and watch out in the whirlpool for your DMS.
Yeah.
You don't form it under 80, so stay below 80 degrees. And of course, it all depends then on how great what your maltster is doing, of course. Because also a lot of DMS is vented during kilning. But I was amazed that you don't have to boil off DMS if you don't form it, which makes absolute sense. And you don't have to get rid of a hot break if you don't form it. And then I was like, Jesus. And the more you are doing this and you're working with it and you're refining the process, the more amazing it gets. But I'm aware that probably the whole thing about boiling for 1 hour was introduced with lager brewing, because lager brewing always relied on 1 or 2 decoctions, the really classical ways of Czech beers and German beers. Yeah, and with the decoction, you boil a part of your mash, and once you start boiling, you have DMS, and then you have to boil. You have to go all the way, and you have to boil off everything. But if you don't go for decoctions, and you stay below 80 degrees, then you don't have to boil off DMS. And that is such an eye-opener. And then I said, like, Jesus, I'm 48, 50 years old. I have been misinformed for years. Or I have been influenced by a certain way of brewing.
So what does your boil then look like? You're going to keep it hot but under 80 degrees.
We lauter at 78, which is the lautering temperature in Belgium or in Europe. You must lauter at 78. And we stay at 78. And we keep the temperature at 78, but of course, at first it seems easy, but you have to avoid local overheating, because then, for instance, if you have a steam jacket and really at the interface between your heating fluids and your worts, very locally you have 120, 150 degrees, you will form DMS over there.
Right.
So you need to homogenize a lot, keep your delta T as low as possible, and do whatever you can to not have anywhere temperatures which are considerably higher than 80 degrees.
So no hot spots in that kettle, and if you do have those hot spots, then you're going to have the problem all over again. Yeah. Anything else that you've learned through the process?
Yeah, I'm amazed. No flocks.
So why do you do it? Why do you do it now?
Oh, that's easy. Your energy consumption goes down a lot in your brew house. And many brew houses without heat recuperation, the typical system where you condensate your fumes and you heat up brewing liquor with the heat coming from the fumes. If you don't have that and you have a classical chimney while you're evaporating 5, 6, 7% of water, then maybe you can save up 1/3 to half of your energy consumption in a brew. So it's money, but it is also good for the green image of the sector, of course, and the CO2 footprint and everything.
You're losing less volume too, because you're not boiling off and evaporating that much liquid.
But then you can wash less. You have less sparging. So your brew house yield might go down a little bit. You have to always hit your OG, because you cannot boil off anymore. Once you're too thin, or you add sugar.
Yeah.
So you need to work with it and learn to work with it. But it's a great technology, money-wise, sustainability-wise, flavor-wise for dark beers.
What do you think?
I know a lot of those New England IPA brewers or IPA brewers, they have to cool down their whirlpool to 90, 85 degrees, 80, and then you don't have to just dry hop because your wort is only 80 degrees.
Yeah, that you can whirlpool without having to cool it. It's you're already at your cool pool temperature right there. Yeah. Well, there is a number that are doing that and using even some other techniques. I'll have to talk about it with some of them in the future. But anyway, I think it's so funny to watch such a modern beer style like hazy IPA using, even in this sense, something that realistically was used in Scandinavian farmhouse beers centuries ago. And that as much as we love to think that something is new or a technique is innovative, there's probably a historical precedent
absolutely
for it sometime in the past. But the malt flavor, you think is heightened in these dark beers?
Well, that's why we also started experimenting with blonde versions, and the blonde versions are nice. They're not overly malty, grainy, dusty. They're good. They're good. Most of the things that I'm saying are empirical observations. I'm trying to find some logic and some theory behind it, because for the moment the results are better than expected.
Well, that's really fun. Well, let's look at the big picture as we finish up here. you've now been at this for 5 years, and you've built a community brewery. You make beers for your local village. We're probably not going to have time to talk about beer cocktails in this, other than to say that you're going to experiment tonight and even develop a second one. For the brewery itself.
I will test one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I made many beer cocktails at home. Absolutely. But I want to do more beer cocktails over here, but I just don't find the time yet. But there's a great future for beer cocktails, I'm sure.
You have the license to make beer cocktails. Dimitri says it's okay and everyone should try it.
Yep.
It is not an insult to his beer, his triple or his Belgian blonde. If you decide to mix in,
it's okay. It can only enrich the overall flavor of the beer you're making, and maybe you can do something in a beer cocktail which you're not able to do technically in your brew house or your fermentation area. So. And it might be a way to introduce people to all the possibilities which you can do on a culinary point of view with beer. So I think every glass of beer that ends up in the, throat of a consumer instead of a distilled drink in a cocktail, why not? And I'm sure that the experience will be certainly as good, and very often even maybe lower in ABV, which is also good nowadays.
Amen to that. So what is next for Adept then? What do you see in the future, and what do you hope to achieve in the next 3 or 5 years?
As I told at the start, I took a little step back at Duvel, working only part-time now instead of full-time after 70 years. So I want to dedicate a little bit more time over here, and that would hopefully result in a little bit more innovation, maybe some more beer cocktails, a little bit more volume, of course. I have to compensate. I don't have this thick bank account, or how do you call it, or a huge amount of savings, so I still have to work. So if I work less at Duvel, I have to work more here. But I hope to speed up a little bit the innovation going on here. And maybe also within 3 years, it would be great to see here in our beautiful garden, which of course the podcast audience cannot see, a little barn with some wooden barrels in it, with a cool ship. And I always said, when I discovered raw ale brewing, raw ale brewing is already one step back of being like a modern brewer, taking one step back to and dig into some more ancient ways of brewing. But for me, the pinnacle of brewing, of course, is spontaneous fermentation. So if I would see here within 3 years a little barn with some wooden barrels and a cool ship, and having some really nice spontaneously fermented sour beers maturing here in barrels for a blend within, 5-6 years. Again, good things come to those who wait. That would be really great.
I hear the airborne yeast on this east side of Brussels is just not the same as it is on the west side. I don't know if that would even work. So,
but I'm willing to give it a try. Let's say when this place was still not renovated and this was still a blacksmith's workshop, we did a little artisans fair here in the garden before the renovation, and I had to do some show brewing. I said to give some explanations about brewing, and I said I have to find something, to be busy, but also to be able to talk to people. So I said I will do a beer with a 3-4 hour boil, which is the absolute inverse of raw ale brewing, of course. And I said beer style which use a lot of long boil is lambic. So I said I will make a typical lambic wort. I will boil it for 3-4 hours, and that gives me the time to explain to the people what I'm doing. And then I will try to spontaneously ferment it. So I put the wort in a bucket. I put it inside the old blacksmith's workshop. I let it stand overnight, and then I got it out, and then I said like, oh, lambic brews, they cool on a cool ship. So also on that cool ship, they separate the hot trap from the cold trap from the wort. And oh shit, I won't be doing this here now. Maybe that will have an effect, but I didn't have another sterile plastic fermenter. So I had to clean it, and I said, well, let's put it another night in the garden too. It was a nice night. So I said, like, all the bugs that I can catch, why not? So I put it another night in the garden. And then I did all the stuff that you need to do for spontaneously fermented beer. But I left on business days, on a business trip, short business trip. And Lambic Brews had said, like, if it doesn't start the third, fourth day after you pitched it it won't work. And I left, and the water lock was not moving at all. When I returned from my short business trip, I put it in my living room. I entered, and I opened the door of our living room. My wife was sitting in the sofa. I saw her sitting, and I heard at the same time, blub, 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 blub. And I said to my wife, is that? She said, yeah, your fermenter bucket is going like crazy. And I was so happy. So, and then I let that bucket for 1 year. I put it aside, and I didn't taste it. I said I will only taste it after 1 year. And I tasted it after 1 year, and it was a nice, spontaneously fermented wort, but it was not sour. So I still have to do some work to make it sour now. But maybe you will make spontaneously fermented beers here, but not sour. But that's not bad either. But
fascinating.
I'll give it a try.
Interesting. And it sounds like you're up for the challenge. Well, that's a great place to bring this to a close. G&D Chiller's Elite 290 Series chiller uses propane as a natural refrigerant with extremely low GWP. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers their best-selling liquid yeast strain with the ease of use of dry yeast. Hit the refresh button on your fruit flavors with the latest additions from Old Orchard. Give your customers a pleasant surprise with Audacia from Indie Hops in your next IPA. Santa Clean PAA Pro from 5 Star Chemicals is tough on beer stone and perfect for everything from kegs to packaging lines. Pactex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. Heart Print has your back from concept to can with fast turnarounds and no minimums. Brightly software enhances your data-driven decision-making. And come to Flanders in 2026 to celebrate the 10th anniversary of UNESCO recognition. And while you're here, you can swing by Adept here in Winksela and enjoy some of the beer like we've been talking about today. If you've enjoyed this episode, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button, become a subscriber to Craft Beer and Brewing, and help us support bringing you conversations like this and content and great articles like those from Lars Marius Garschel in issues of Craft Beer and Brewing magazine. Dimitri, if people want to learn more about Adept and Dimitri here, where can they find you all, both in the digital space and in real life?
Adept is present on Facebook and Instagram, and the Smederij has its own website where the brewery is a part of the website. So that's desmederijwingsle.be. But if you Google it, you certainly will find it, and otherwise on Facebook or Instagram.
Well, it's been fascinating talking to you about Belgian blonde ale, about raw ales, and everything else. I really appreciate you making the time to talk with me. Cheers.
Okay, my pleasure. Hope I made Vinny and Tommy proud. Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers. This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.